Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode. We're working on Unit 4, Lessons 1 and 2. Our topic of the day is Into the Past. So what do you think we're going to be tackling today? Maybe history. Let's get started. We're going to be reading reviews of historic places in Egypt and a student's account of Jerash, information about a museum, and a text about a trip to a museum, and a text about ancient objects. Then we're going to be writing a paragraph describing a historic place, a report about a historic site. We'll be listening to a talk about a school trip, a talk about a historic place, an account of a trip to a museum, and the class debate. As for speaking, we're going to be describing a historic place and a telephone call asking for information, and a debate about the effects of tourism. As for language, our language focus for grammar is past continuous. As for life skills, we're going to focus on self-management and critical thinking. As for values, we're going to talk about Egypt coexistence values and responsible behavior. As for issues, we're going to be discussing environmental and developmental issues. Into the past. Which of these places do you know? Which places would you like to visit? So find a partner and let's look at the pictures together. The first picture at the top is Cairo University. The picture below it is Genie in Mali. The picture on the right-hand side is Leptis Magna in Libya. The picture on the lower left-hand side is, of course, the pyramids of Giza, Egypt. And on the right beside it is Jamila in Algeria. And of course, the last picture on the right side below is Baalbek, Lebanon. Now, tell your partner which of these places do you know and which places would you love or like to visit. Look through the unit. Where are the stone circles? You will find out information about where are the stone circles. Once you're done with that, we're going to research or find out some facts about the history of Elephantine Island in Aswan. Of course, the stone circles are in Senegal and Gambia. We're going to move to our vocabulary section. I want you to work in pairs. What do you think these words mean? Try to find them in the photos on page 34 in your workbook. Ark, castle, mosque, museum, pyramid, ruins, stadium, statue, temple, and theater. Of course, the things in the photos on page 34 are ark, castle, pyramids, ruins, temple, and statue. The ones that are not in the photos are the museum, the stadium, the mosque, and the theater. Now, I'd like you to listen to the teacher. What is she telling the class about? Is she telling about a holiday or a school trip or a school project? Let's listen together. I'm sure you're all excited about visiting the pyramids next Sunday. It's important that we plan our trip properly. So, I need to talk to you about rules. On Sunday morning, you must arrive at school on time so that we can leave straight away. It is a long drive to Giza from the school. We're going to be away from school for the whole day, so you must bring a packed lunch. It's going to be very hot, so you must also bring a hat and a bottle of water. Of course, the pyramids are very important to the history and culture of our country. We must help to protect them. You mustn't climb the pyramids or sit on them. You mustn't drop litter. You must bring all of our rubbish home with us. So, are there any questions about the trip? What is she telling the class? about? Is she talking about a holiday or a school trip or a school project? Of course, the answer is B, a school trip. Now, you will rewind the video and listen one more time to complete the table about the things the students must or should do and the things that the students mustn't or shouldn't do. The first one is done for us, which is to arrive to school on time. So students must arrive at school on time. The second is bring a packed lunch. So students must bring a packed lunch. Students must bring a hat and a bottle of water. Students must help protect the pyramids. And students must bring all our rubbish home. As for the things the students mustn't do, students mustn't climb the pyramids. Students mustn't sit on the pyramids. And students mustn't drop litter. Now, I want you to look at the pictures below and fill in the blanks with must or mustn't. So these are rules in a library, at a school, at the pyramids, and at the pool. What you need to do is fill it with the correct instruction on whether people must or mustn't do something. Number 1 is partly done for us. Let's read it together. You mustn't eat or drink. You blank be quiet. So of course this is a library. So what should we say? You must be quiet. Now let's move on to number 2. This is a school building. You must or mustn't listen to the teacher. Of course it is. You must listen to the teacher. You mustn't be noisy in class. So you must listen to the teacher. You have to listen to the teacher. And you shouldn't be noisy in class, or you mustn't be noisy in class. Number 3 is, of course, the pyramids. You blank touch the stones. You blank put your rubbish in the bin. Of course, it is you mustn't touch the stones. You must put your rubbish in the bin. As for number 4, at the pool, you blank have a shower before you swim. You blank run near the pool. So what should we do here? We should fill in with must. You must have a shower before you swim, and you mustn't run near the pool. Because what would happen to you? Of course, you would slide and fall. Now, I'd like you to work in pairs with a partner. Think of a place that you visit and say the rules of that place. For example, let's read the speech bubbles. In a museum, you mustn't touch the objects. Now, think of a place you go to and think of the rules of that place and share it with your partner. We will move on to lesson 2, and these are reviews about places that were visited. Okay, let's read together. An amazing day out. This is the subtitle for the first review. I visited Abydos last week with my cousins. There's so much to see. Temples, amazing art, and ruins in the desert. I'm not usually very interested in history, but this place is awesome. It's really amazing. This was said by Magid from Cairo. The second one is Get a Guide. That is the subtitle for the review. The ruins at the Karnak temple were amazing and we enjoyed our visit. It's a big place, so you need a few hours to walk around it. It's also a good idea to get a guide to tell you all about the history. This was stated by Layla from Asyut. As for the third review, the subtitle is Go Back to Roman Times. I visited the Roman theater in Alexandria with my cousins last week. It's easy to imagine what life in Roman times was like here. There are also statues and the ruins of a temple in the museum there. It was great fun. This was stated by Samir from Giza. Now, if we look at the number of stars given by each person, Magid gave the Abydos 5 stars. As for Layla, she gave the Karnak temple 4 stars, and Samir gave the Roman theater in Alexandria 5 stars. Now, let's complete the information on the upper right-hand side. Which person? So we're going to write down which person stated which idea. Number 1. Who visited a museum? Of course, if we look around, we will know that this is Samir for sure. He's the 3rd person who gave the review. Number 2. Which person thinks you need a few hours to see everything? Let's keep searching. We want to scan for specific information. Of course, that person is Layla. Layla thinks you need a few hours to see everything. As for the next one, number 3, which person does not usually like learning about old places? The person who does not enjoy learning about old places is, of course, Megid. Megid is not interested in learning about old places. He says, I'm not usually very interested in history. Now, number 4. Which person says you should ask someone to explain things about the place? Of course, that person is Layla. Layla stated that you probably need a guide to help you to know more information. She says it's also a good idea to get a guide to tell you all about the history. Number 5. Which person thinks the ruins here are really good? Let's look for the person who went to visit a specific place that has ruins. And of course, that is Layla. Number 5. Which person thinks the ruins here are really good? Of course, it is Megid. Megid said, there's so much to see: temples, amazing art, and ruins in the desert. Now, last question in this section. Which person visited Abydos with his family? Of course, that person is Megid. He says, I visited Abydos last week with my cousins. Now we will move on to look at the photos on the upper left-hand side. What do you think people did in Jerash 2,000 years ago? Look at picture A, picture B, picture C, and picture D, and try to guess what did people do 2,000 years ago in Jerash. Of course, the answer is people went to the theater. If you look at the left-hand side, you'll notice that this very old open space building is a theater where people watched specific shows that were done there. And people went to the temple. Of course, you can see the temple in the second picture. As for the last picture, people watched sports competitions. Now we're going to move on to question 3. Read about Jerash and match the photos A to D to the paragraphs 1 to 4. The city of Jerash by Azza. Jerash is a Roman city in Jordan. It is more than 2,000 years ago. Number 1 is matched with B. It's already done for us. So we're going to match the sentence with the picture above. When you go there, the first thing you see is the entrance to the city. The ark is very tall. You must buy a ticket before you go in. So, of course, this is picture B. As for number 2, the Romans enjoyed watching sport. This stadium is for Roman horse races. You can watch races there today. Of course, this is number 2D. So we're going to match 2 with picture D. Number 3, Jerash has 3 Roman theaters. The biggest theater is the South Theater. 5,000 people can sit there. In this case, of course, the Roman theater is the picture on the top left-hand side, which is picture A. So we will match number 3 with picture A. As for number 4, this temple is on a hill. There's an amazing view of the city here. I think it is important to learn about historic places around the world. We must protect them so that people can visit in the future too. Of course, here we're talking about picture C, which is a picture of a temple on a hill. Now we're going to move on to exercise 4. Read the text again and answer the questions. What do you think historic means? Historic means important in history. Number 2, how old is the city of Jerash? Of course, it is more than 2,000 years old. Number 3, what did people watch at the stadium? At the stadium, people watched Roman horse races. So these were very popular back then. They did not play soccer like today. They watched Roman horse races. As for number 4, how many people can sit in the theater? 5,000 people can sit in the theater or at the theater. Number 5, what can you see from the temple? You can see an amazing view of the city. We're talking about picture C. As for question 6, why does Azza think it's important to protect historic places? And the answer is, we can learn a lot about life in Roman times. Now we will move to our speaking section. Work in pairs. Tell your partner about a historic place you visited. You can use some of these adjectives, such as amazing, ancient, awesome, historic, interesting. The pyramids of Dahshur are awesome. I went there with my family last year and we loved it. Now, think of a place you visited or you'd like to visit and use some of these adjectives. So we can say, I went to the amazing waterfall in Malaysia. It was a beautiful, ancient place with a lot of historic background. Now write a short description of the place you talked about with your partner in exercise 5. Make sure to include adjectives from the adjectives we have used. As for values, what can we learn from a historic place? What do you think? Of course, we can learn about life in the past. Why do you think it's important to learn about the history of other countries? We can understand the countries better, and sometimes history repeats itself. Question 3. How should you behave when you visit a historic place in another country? Of course, you should behave well and show respect to these places. As for our exit slip for the day, write a review of a place you visited recently. Make sure you give reasons for your choice. So, write a review, give the place a specific number of stars. The minimum is 1, the maximum is 5, and write what you think of the place and why. Guys, that's a wrap. You did very well today. This was Ms. Sarah Bassioni. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.